Today, we are diving deep into the science of adrenal aging and how it has this huge, often invisible impact on our brains.
You know that feeling, right? A rough day at the office just seems to land a heavier punch than it did, say, 10 years ago. And bouncing back from it, it just feels slower.
Well, it turns out it's not just in your head. It's not just a feeling. It's a very real biological switch. There are actual measurable changes happening deep inside your body that completely rewire how you handle stress as you age. So let's get into how this whole thing works. All right, first up, we're going to talk about what we're calling the aging stress switch. This is really about that fundamental shift in our body's entire stress management system as we get older. So here's the core idea. There's this incredibly deep link between the biology of aging and our response to chronic stress. In fact, there's some really compelling evidence showing that long-term stress can actually speed up the aging process, because it turns out they share the exact same biological highways. Okay, so to really get what goes wrong, we first have to understand how the system is supposed to work when everything's running smoothly. So let's take a look at the body's own built-in alarm system. So meet the main player in all this, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis for short. You can pretty much think of it as a chain of command. It kicks off in the brain with the hypothalamus, which then sends a message to the pituitary gland. The pituitary then signals way down to the adrenal glands, which are these little guys sitting right on top of your kidneys. And here's how that whole chain reaction plays out in a crisis. First, your brain senses some kind of threat. The hypothalamus shoots out a signal called CRH. That CRH then tells the pituitary, hey, release your signal, which is called ACTH. And finally, ACTH travels all the way down to the adrenal glands and basically tells them to sound the alarm by pumping out our main stress hormone, cortisol. Now, cortisol is absolutely critical. I mean, it gets you ready for action, mobilizes energy, sharpens your focus, gets you ready to fight or run. But it has another job that's just as important: turning the alarm off. See, cortisol sends a message back up to the brain, a negative feedback signal that basically says, okay, we got the message, threat handled, you can stand down now. And this is what keeps the whole system in balance. But, and this is a big but, this is where aging crashes the party. This beautifully balanced system starts to get all out of whack. And it really comes down to a tale of two very important hormones. This picture really shows the problem perfectly. If you look on the left, you've got a healthy young system. Cortisol gets released and a nice, strong signal goes back to the brain telling it to shut everything down. But look at the right, in an older system. That feedback signal, it's weak, it's fuzzy. The brain doesn't really get that all-clear message, so the adrenals just keep pumping out more and more cortisol. So this is the crucial imbalance we're talking about. As we age, cortisol, our alarm hormone, just steadily goes up. And at the exact same time, another hormone from the adrenals, called DHEA, which is really protective for our brain and helps buffer against stress, well, it goes way, way down. And the result of this growing gap, this rising cortisol to DHEA ratio, is a state of chronic low-grade stress. That alarm system we talked about, it essentially gets stuck in the on position. And research shows this imbalance ramps up what's called neurotoxicity, leaving our brain really vulnerable to damage. Okay, so let's follow the breadcrumbs. How does this hormonal imbalance actually translate into damage? Let's see what's really happening inside our brain cells. To get this, we need to meet a new character in our story, the tau protein. The best way to think of tau is like the internal scaffolding, or the struts inside a neuron. It keeps the cell's structure strong and helps transport all the nutrients where they need to go. It's absolutely vital for a healthy brain cell. Now, here's the problem. Sometimes these tau proteins go rogue. They misfold, they stop doing their job, and instead, they start clumping together into these toxic tangles. And these tau aggregates, they are one of the key signs of neurodegenerative diseases, like Alzheimer's. So this is the million-dollar question, right? We've got this hormonal mess creating chronic stress over here, and we've got these toxic tau tangles causing damage over there. How exactly does one lead to the other? What's the link? To answer that, we've got to zoom way, way in. I mean, down to the molecular level to see what's happening inside a single stressed-out neuron. So every single one of your cells has this amazing housekeeping service called autophagy. The easiest way to think about it is as the cell's garbage disposal and recycling system. Its job is to go around, find damaged or misfolded proteins, like that rogue tau we just talked about, and break them down before they can cause any real trouble.
Now, there's another thing. When a cell is under stress, it forms these things called stress granules. Think of these like little cellular emergency response teams. They rush to protect the cell's vital genetic material when things get hairy. But, and this is important, if they stick around for too long, they can become toxic themselves. And a key protein here is one called TIA1.
And here it is. This is how it all connects in a really dangerous chain reaction. First, that chronic stress leads to chronically high cortisol. Then, that high cortisol directly blocks the cell's autophagy system. The garbage disposal gets jammed. So, with the cleanup crew out of commission, all this toxic junk, like the misfolded tau and those sticky stress granule proteins, starts to pile up and just wreck the neuron from the inside.
And here's the final, just devastating piece of the puzzle. It turns out it's not just that stress blocks the cleanup. That stress granule protein we just mentioned, TIA1, it actually binds directly to tau. It's like a seed that helps those toxic clumps form and grow even faster. It's a double whammy.
So let's zoom all the way back out. We've just walked through a clear step-by-step biological pathway. The hormonal shifts from aging make our brains more vulnerable to stress. Then, that chronic stress sets off a molecular cascade that gums up the cell's cleaning systems and actively helps create toxic proteins. This combination, this synergy between aging and stress, it isn't just a feeling, it's a proven mechanism that can literally accelerate how fast our brains age.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about. If we know for a fact that managing our stress isn't just about feeling better in the moment, but is fundamentally tied to the long-term health and aging of our brain, what does that change about the choices we make about our health, starting right now?